Want to bring on and introduce and welcome Sherelle. Thank you for spending time with us this afternoon. And then secondly, but not least, is Dr. Nicole Williams, who hails from Baltimore. And she received her bachelor's degree in psychology, yes, from Bowie State University, and which is near and dear to my heart. I'm not going to go into it, but I cut my teeth as a professional in higher ed at Bowie State University. So yes, we definitely have to talk, Dr. Nicole. So Bowie State, and she has her doctorate in social psychology from Howard University. So I know we have some Howard grads. I don't know if they're in the room today, but shout out Howard, HU. Before becoming a professor, she worked in the field of human services for 9 years. And after receiving her doctorate, she entered the world of academia and is currently a full professor and academic chair of human services at Anne Arundel Community College. She teaches, and for those of you all who are not local, that is a county outside of the District of Columbia, not far, maybe 40 miles outside of DC, to the east by the water. It's really pretty. She also serves on several boards, including the board for Jewel House Inc., Destined to Speak Inc., Destined to Speak Inc., the Community Advisory Board for Housing Commission for Anne Arundel County, and Dr. Angela Y. Davis Academy, and also serves on the board for the WISE Org Global. She is committed to the field of human services, and she continues to serve her community and provides the highest quality of education for the future generation of professionals. So as you all could see, we weren't playing when we were bringing people to this particular event, making sure they could address and speak to what we want to talk about today, which is self-care. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to our Mistress of Ceremonies and Facilitator, Professor Keys, as we adoringly know her, but Kezia Williams. So there you go. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Williams, for being with us as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Ackerwall.
One sec, Kezia, we do have a volume problem now. Is it me? Can you all hear her, or is it me? Let's see the chat.
Having some trouble hearing her.
Okay, yeah, you went out completely. No.
No, you're distant. Maybe.
Yeah, she's going to go out and come back in. So everyone just hold tight. You all know we've dealt with technology this past year. So we're going to hold tight, give her a second to come back in. If that doesn't work, then she's going to dial in. So just give us one moment. Thank you for your patience. Well, I can tell you what, while we're waiting, in the chat, put something in the chat that you would like to not just talk about, but learn about today. Is there anything in particular that drew you to this particular Power Suite session?
Is that good? Is my volume back on?
It's very low. I can hear you, Kezia, but very low.
How about now?
That's a little better.
A little better? Hold on, let me turn it up. Is this good?
There you go.
It's good? Y'all can hear me?
But I can hear you. Can everyone hear?
Loud and clear. Okay.
Yes.
Tell me in the chat, students, can y'all hear me? I want to make sure that you all can hear.
Yes. And while you were getting back in, I asked them to put in the chat the reason why they're here, what they wanted to learn about today.
Awesome. Okay.
And they can hear you. Okay, we're good.
Okay, so what y'all don't know is before y'all got in the chat, we were having a little battle on what's better, PC or Mac. And I'm sorry to say that my PC just failed me, y'all. I'm so humiliated. I'm not sure if I'm ready to join Team Mac, but I don't know. They may be making a case. So let's hop into it now. So when you all RSVP for this event, we asked you, how are you feeling? Are you feeling very happy? Are you feeling happy? Are you feeling just okay? Are you feeling sad? And 54% of you all said that you were feeling just okay. So I want to ask, we'll start with Dr. Williams. When you hear that some of our beautiful, Black, educated, entrepreneurial leaders are feeling just okay, what's your response?
Absolutely. Thanks for asking the question. So I would say that's what I would expect to hear. If someone during a pandemic and all that's happening in the world say, I'm great, everything is fine, I would be like, really? So in other words, let's normalize it. This is not normal. What's happening is not normal. So I don't expect people to say, I'm great, I'm happy, everything is good. No. Let's be real. I spoke to a colleague the other day and I said, how are you doing? He said, I'm doing. Me too. So it's okay. It's okay. Because it doesn't do any good to be fake about how you're feeling. Because you can say one thing, but your body knows something different.
Yes. No, that's so good, Dr. Williams. I like that. It doesn't do anything to be fake about how you're feeling. And I know sometimes, right, we're so wired to hear like, how are you? And the automatic response is fine. You know, even when you don't feel fine and you turn on the news, there's so many different reasons why perhaps legitimately you might not feel fine. So I appreciate what you said. Ms. Langline, what's your response to that question?
I am right there with Dr. Williams. It is what it is right now. Yeah. This is how we're feeling. We are living through terrifying times. And I think it's very normal for people to just be okay. And I think there's actually there's some joy in being just okay because we're alive. If you're just okay, you've made it this far in this pandemic, right? And so I think it's very important to remind yourself of the positive things that are happening. I agree that it doesn't do any good to pretend you're okay when you're not, but also let's not wallow in self-pity because the whole world is going through this pandemic, right? So we're alive, we're here, we're making it, and you guys are all here doing things to better yourselves. So you do have a lot to be thankful for, and something that's helpful for me is to highlight the positive that we have going on, and it really can kind of change your outlook. And so be authentic, but also be thankful.
Yeah, so find gratitude in that, right? So, you know, you're going through it, but you're also growing through it, and not in a way where you're alone, right? The pandemic didn't just hit you. It's hit not just this nation, but the entire world. And so people have similar experiences, but growing through it, right, as they go through it. Now, one of the things you said, Dr. Williams, is pandemic, right? We just watched Derek Chauvin get found guilty on not one, not two, but 3 charges. And now we're awaiting the sentencing, right? And we're holding our breath, you know, hoping for justice to be served. There's Daunte Wright, a young Black man who we saw get pulled over for air freshener being hung, you know, on his window that did not survive that encounter. Black unemployment, Black underemployment, even as our scholars are contemplating internships and trying to figure out how to land on their feet. Student loan debt, everybody's looking at Biden like, Biden, how much you gonna cancel this year? Is it gonna be 10K? Is it gonna be 50K? So some people know are being affected by different things, right? And perhaps they are feeling just okay, or maybe even less than that. How do we define the terms anxiety and depression?
Okay, is that for me?
Yes, Dr. Williams, we'll start with you.
Okay, absolutely. So depression, so we can look at the clinical terms for depression and anxiety, right? So meaning that when you're talking about depression, you're talking about different characteristics that define what it means to be depressed. So you're talking about, sometimes, let me go back. Sometimes people think that depression is I feel sad. They often think about just the affect. How am I feeling? But depression goes a lot deeper than just how you feel. You may not feel sad. Depression can manifest itself in other ways. So in other words, loss of appetite, gain of appetite. How many of us gained that 20 pounds from COVID when COVID first hit? And your coping was eating. So
Mm.
depression can manifest itself that way: oversleeping, not being able to sleep, loss of interest in normal activities. So you don't want to watch TV, you don't want to be on social media. You usually like to talk to your friends. You don't feel like doing that anymore. You love reading, don't feel like doing that either. Like to exercise, that's what I'm going through. I don't feel like it. I'm not. So you begin to lose motivation. So these are the ways that depression can manifest itself. And then the same thing with anxiety. Anxiety is that feeling of being nervous. It's racing thoughts. All right. So you can't stop thinking. And then sometimes it's also perseverating on thoughts. And what that means is that there's a constant thinking about the same thought over and over and over again. Anxiety can manifest itself in just feeling fearful all the time, feeling nervous, feeling anxious. Your body can manifest the anxiety based on like just your heart palpitations. When people have ulcers, that comes from stress, that comes from anxiety, and the acids are eating at your body. And that's what ulcers come from, stress. So it can manifest itself physically. So these are just what depression can look like and what anxiety can look like. But let me say this, these are very normal feelings. And just because you're experiencing this, it does not mean that we would diagnose you with what we would say clinical depression, right? Or anxiety disorder, all right? These things become problematic when you have a few of the characteristics that I just named, and it has to happen for a period of time. So we're talking about 6 weeks, we're talking about 2 months or more, and the inability to function has been impacted. So I don't want you to walk away and think, oh my God, I have clinical depression. No, these are just ways that depression manifests itself, and it's very normal. But there is a period when it does become diagnosable, and it's now a clinical disorder.
Clinical. And so like what I'm hearing is that you can feel depression and perhaps it's not clinical depression, but you should pay attention to the signs, right? So if you know sleep for 8 hours, but now you're sleeping for 14 or 16 hours, pay attention to the signs. What are the triggers that are maybe lending themselves to that, right? So like you eat 3 meals a day. Somebody, you got to put your phone on mute because we can hear you, your whole conversation. Okay, thank you. So if it's one of those things where you eat 3 meals a day, but now you're going to the refrigerator all the time, right? So like pay attention to that. Why are you eating? Is it because you're hungry or perhaps you're coping? Yes. So like really begin to pay attention to not only the signs, but how long you're experiencing those signs. Pay attention to that as an element of self-care, but also self-reflection. And Ms. Langwan, what about you? What can you contribute to this? With anxiety and depression, what are some symptoms that show up? What have you seen around that?
So right now I work in a domestic violence shelter, and with everything going on, it is very normal that we've seen quite an uptick in people who are now, it has become a clinical issue. One thing I can say to touch on something Dr. Williams mentioned is, if you find yourself maybe eating a lot or sleeping a lot, be gentle, be kind with yourself, okay? So like we are going through, like we mentioned before, some really hard stuff. And if that is your way to cope, it's okay. What you do need to keep an eye on it, like Kezia said, right? Just to make sure that this isn't becoming out of control. But also it's okay if you are finding comfort in eating 3 slices of pizza instead of 2, right? These are not things that are a detriment to who you are. You're finding a way that is easy to cope. I saw in the chat in the beginning, someone said, one of the things they wanted to know is, how do we cope? I think people often look at those lists online of coping skills and expect your coping skills to need to look like that. Recognize that it doesn't need to look like that. You are the driver in your life, and you've made it to this point in your life successfully. You know how you cope, okay? So now it's just your time to like employ those things that work for you. The ball is in your court to kind of jump in and do what works.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Langwan, and I'm actually going to toss it right on back to you, because one of the difficult conversations that we've had over and over again in the Black community is, oh my gosh, like I feel something is wrong, but I don't want to talk to a professional. You're an art therapist, Dr. Williams is a psychologist, like, do I need to talk to a professional, because I'm feeling this way. Does this mean that something is wrong with me? And I know that both of you all said, okay, no, this is okay. It's okay to feel this way. But still, these are scary words that aren't often talked about in the open in the Black community. So when you're going through these things and you want to lean on people who are in your immediate circle, how do you have those conversations with people who may have stigmatized those two words?
That's an excellent question.
I'm gonna start with you.
So one thing that I definitely recommend to do, I think it's great to lean on the people you love. Your family and friends are there for a reason, but they are also going through a lot of the things that we are going through, right? They are not our paid professionals. So I think it's always important to, before you dive into a heavy conversation like that with someone, just ask them, are you in the space to hear this right now? Are you in the space to process this with me and to talk about this? That gives them the opportunity to be like, you know what? I'm actually not. I'm here for you maybe tomorrow after I got this exam, but maybe they're not there. But I think sometimes we dump things on people, right? Without meaning to. But lean on the people you love, but also give them the opportunity to say, I'm not in the space for that. And just like Dr. Williams was saying earlier, when these symptoms continue, it's time to see someone, right? If you're talking to your mom and your roommate and your friends every day and it's not getting any better, then it might be time to talk to a professional.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Dr. Williams, what's your perspective here?
Yeah, I would definitely say, this in terms of that piece, I thought I was muted. So I would definitely say as well, like the power in going to a professional is to have first and foremost an objective perspective. Ooh. Friends and family often tell us what we want to hear. Ooh. And not what we need to hear. Okay, so it's having an objective perspective, and then it's also having, once again, a lot of us give ourselves in terms of our time. We're there for our family and our friends. You guys are in school, seeking careers, and we give of ourselves a lot. The power in going to seek help, like when I went to therapy, and I've been in therapy several times. When I tell you, it felt good to have somebody sitting there for me.
Yes. Yeah.
Like she belonged to me for 45 minutes. And I didn't have to be anybody other than Nicole. And I could be my most vulnerable self. And I had someone that was listening and that just gave me her undivided attention. So when you think about going to a professional, instead of stigmatizing it, think about it in that, that you are so valuable, that you deserve to have someone that's going to give you their unadulterated time.
Come on now.
And energy to help you to help you in terms of what you're going through. So I do agree, we have to destigmatize therapy and seeking professional help. And then we have to know that what we don't want to do is, let's not wait until the very last minute. It's like when we have a car and you take your car in and everything is broke.
Yeah.
Let's do what we're supposed to do with cars, which I don't do, but you go in for your tune-ups, you go in for your checkups and things like that. So therapy is good for that as well. It doesn't have to be this big, huge problem. A lot of times when we wait until it metastasizes to that level, then it's harder to get through it, But if you kind of go to a therapist in the middle of I just need someone to talk to, just someone to process with, the healing process can be a lot easier.
Oh no, that's so good. That car analogy was absolutely amazing because my bumper is falling off. I did put some tape on it. It's been a year. I dump oil in my car every other month. No, I got an oil leak. But my car has had some rest because I don't have a commute.
Right.
Bodies in our minds, we got to wake up and drive this thing every day. You got to be in your body, you got to be in your mind.
Yes.
For more hours, but eventually our prayer is that you wake up. And guess what? You're still in that body, you're still in that mind. And so I love that you threw some SAT words at us, unadulterated, y'all. So that means that therapist is not seeing you and you and you and you and you at the same time. It is exclusive. Don't we love that, folks? Exclusive for you. Metastasization, right? You said metastasize, right? So that means that before the problem becomes so plentiful that you can't control it. Let's go ahead and contain it. You know, let's go ahead and have that conversation with someone who you have hired to pay attention to you. And that objective opinion is so important, because you know those people who know you back in the day, you know, you trying to come to them as Michelle with a problem, but they still remember you as Lil Kiki, right? Lil Nut Nut, right? So they remember all of your experiences up until now. So that objective opinion is important. And so I hope that you all caught that. And I really like what Miss Landine said too, is that sometimes you will come to people in your life who you really, really love, right? Who love you, who might be distracted, who might have other things going on in their life. And so if you're going to have a conversation with them and lean on them, I mean, in order for you to create that safe space, ask them the question if you can have permission, right, to invite your personal experiences into a conversation where they can give you, right, that attention that you're seeking. And so I hope that you're taking notes, because I'm over here with the whole notebook, the whole pen, because these are mechanisms that you can use, right? These are insights that you can deploy in your life so that you can go from just okay, right, to something different. Or if you feel just okay, go find a professional who you can talk to, or find that safe space where you can land. Now, I know what our college students are thinking, right? They're trying to get work. Maybe they getting paid with a separate but unequal paycheck, and they're like, great, I want my unadulterated, objective opinion. I want to get my safe space. How can I pay for that with the pennies on the dollar budget? And I'll just toss this up, Dr. Williams, Ms. Landine. How can they begin to find these coping mechanisms on a budget?
Someone already said something really great in the chat. Utilize your health center. When you're in school, you are not going to have that after you graduate. Use that service, okay? It's usually free to the students, and if it's at a cost, it's a very low cost. If that is not something you feel comfortable with, some therapists offer what we call a sliding scale. So when I was in school, I saw a therapist who wasn't covered by the health center, but she knew I was a college student. And so she did what was called a sliding scale, and she kind of lowered the cost to something very minimal that she knew I could afford. Not everyone offers that, but it doesn't hurt to ask. If you really are interested, reach out, ask people, are you able to do anything are you able to accommodate for college students? And people are usually pretty understanding.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah, and also depending on if you have students that do work, and if they work at a place that has EAP. All right, I know all places don't have EAP. So what EAP is Employees Assistance Programs. So pretty much they provide, you can call EAP, it's confidential, no one knows, and then you can get a referral to see a therapist. And it's about 4 to 6 sessions for free, which is just, once again, that may be all that you need just to kind of get started and things like that. So kind of like short-term therapy. And actually, that's how I found my second therapist, was through EAP. So her and I started out doing the EAP sessions. And what they'll do is they'll also spread them out for you. So if it's 6 sessions, then they might do every other week or something, so that there's some time that you have with them. And then from there, we went to I then started paying her through my insurance. So that's one issue. That's one thing that can be done. And then also through Anne Arundel Community College, we have engagement coaching programs where we have trained, not me, I have been trained as a life coach. So we've had all of these cohorts of faculty and staff who have been trained as life coaches. So Keith, I can probably connect you with our director, because what she then does is everyone that has been trained, they connect with other organizations to provide coaching. So right now we're providing coaching for teachers in Baltimore City or Baltimore County that wants coaching, and it's free. So life coaching is like, it's very, hey, if there's an issue, it's kind of like very, it's like, I want to say reality therapy, but you may not know what, but like, it's like Dr. Phil's approach. If you've ever seen that, like, what's the problem? And we're going to actually, work actively towards solving that issue. So you might say, I just need some help with coping. So the plan will be, okay, with these 6 sessions that we get, we're going to help you to cope. And life coaching is very active. So it requires that you are doing something also to help yourself. So that could also be a resource for your students. And I can provide you with that person's information
Thank you.
as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. No, that is amazing. Students, I'm hearing find your free, right? Whether that be the health center
Yeah.
on your campus, this life coaching program that Dr. Williams is talking about, these life coaches that will supply a free 99 service to you to get access to. You can get a bit of Dr. Phil. I don't know if they have Ayala in there, you know, the Ayala type life coaching. Yeah, so that she gonna fix your life, right? So like that, you know, you can have that free, find your free or find your benefit, right? So that's one of the things that you're unemployed. There are several benefits that might be available to you. So that EAP, right? Employee Assistance Program. Does your HR representative have information about that they can supply, right? So while you're working all of these long hours, you know, what are some benefits that your employer offers you for continuing to come to work and create value for them? So I want to pivot the conversation to, okay, there's some folks that feel just okay, and then there's some of our scholars that have very happy feelings, right? We heard some of our students talking about graduating in 17 days, getting their first full-time job with benefits, right? So like these happy feelings that they're experiencing. If there was a definition for feeling happy beyond just, you know, there's this kind of inexplicable emotion inside of me, right? Like, how can you begin to like point to happy if there was a definition behind the word? Let's start with you, Ms. Langan.
So for me, one thing I often tell my clients, happiness, I think, is often defined by the space to be authentic. If you can be fully authentic with yourself, you are truly who you want to be. Not who your mama told you to be, not who your grandmama told you to be, not who your boyfriend, the TV, the magazine, who you truly want to be. When you feel the space to be that person and you feel comfortable in that, that's kind of how I start to point to happiness. When I see my clients making choices that really benefit themselves and putting themselves first, is I see them moving towards happiness.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Dr. Williams.
I'm not, she just
She
nailed
got
that.
it.
She just
got
nailed it, put it in the coffin. I mean, for real. Absolutely. But I totally agree with that. You know, it's alignment with yourself. You know, because a lot of times we think about happy is a feeling. So that can come and go, right? You know what I mean? So I'm gonna go church on y'all. Let's go spiritual. You'll hear a lot of people talk about the difference between happiness and joy.
Ooh.
So you'll hear people say, I'd rather say I have joy. Right? Because joy is something that it's within, right? Because happiness is like, I can be happy because, like you said, we graduating, you're happy when you're on vacation, you know, so that can be kind of a fleeting feeling, right? But once again, when we can get away from the external and look at the internal, which Sherelle was talking about, right? That alignment with yourself, you know, having your boundaries, establishing those boundaries, self-care, being selfless, not always putting everybody first, knowing that you are first, or well, God, and then you know, in your life. So looking at, once again, the alignment with self, and being, when she said authenticity, like that is what she just nailed it.
Yeah,
I think that's a beautiful definition. I love it.
Amazing. Look, y'all having me snap. I'm trying not to throw my book. When I get excited, the scholars already know from hearing me host before, I would throw my book all the way across the room. But since I live by myself, then I have to go get it. So no, I appreciate that. And I see one of our scholars, Dexter, commented, happiness is a feeling, but joy radiates internally. You know, that makes me just, you know, church, you know, I got joy. Joy down in my heart, right? Y'all don't give me to sing it, but I love it because there's this element of and that Mr. Langan or Miss Langan, you touched on this, like, what is it to be with yourself versus by yourself, right? So like, if you can be with yourself and enjoy who that person is, right? The authentic you, not what people say about you, but who you know you are on the inside, right? Then that's how you find you're happy. That's how you have joy, right? So that was just beautiful. Now I'm going to end with this, and then I want to open it up to our scholars for questions. I actually have two questions, but first I want to talk about this, and then I want to talk about how you all, you know, work with individuals. But we hear the terms Black, girl magic and the terms Black boy joy, right? And people get excited when they hear that, but then you start to kind of really kind of dissect, especially the Black girl magic term. And some folks have said, well, am I really magical? Or am I just like a human being? And I know that it's meant in a positive sense, like Black women are powerful, right? Black men are necessary and amazing. When you hear these terms, do you see this as a standard that we should all look up to? Or perhaps there are other terms that we should use to describe Black excellence?
I guess I'll go. I like those things because I think that, words have power. So I think the thing is words have power. And when you say Black girls magic, and then it's Black boys with joy, what was that? Because that's a new one.
Black boy joy.
Black boy joy. The bottom line is this, even going back to what Sherelle said, it's about authenticity. So you define what Black girl magic is. Yeah. Boys, you define what that Black joy is. So it's your definition of who and what you are, and let that radiate. But I like those sayings because words have power, and a lot of times you need to remind yourself that you are wonderful, you are fabulous, you are authentically made by the Most High. So, because, we all have those days where we may not, so it's important to have those positive words. We want to speak energy into life, and we want to speak power to positivity. So I do like that. But once again, it's about how you define, what does that magic mean for you? So that's what I would say. Self-defined it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And just to add to that, I think living in this society that was not set up for us, that joy and that magic in itself is an act of defiance. It is a protest. You need to have that happiness and that joy and that magic to show them they're not going to keep you down, right? You've got this within yourself without anyone needing to give it to you.
Absolutely. I love that. An act of defiance, right?
And can I say one more thing also? And just understand really who and what we are as a people. What we have gone through historically, that would have killed any other race of people. That's your magic right there. That's what we bred from. You got other folks, they got an issue, they jumping off buildings because you lost your million. I mean, no, let's just be honest. And while we know that suicide impacts everyone, but I'm just saying, look at what we have been through as a race, and we are still standing. But that's our DNA. So I'm just saying. And it all comes from us. We the first and the last. Do you know that?
Alpha and Omega.
The Omega.
Yes, I loved it. Oh, the host stopped my video. Troy, I think, hold on. Okay, sorry. The host stopped my video because, it's about to be a whole thing. Alpha and Omega.
No, that was my apologies. I was trying to stop at you.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm just joking with you. Dr. Akabal about to come up in here with a praise dance. I already know it. But no, that is amazing. It's persisting past discrimination, dominating despite Jim Crow, redlining, paycheck protection program. We have gone through so much, housing covenants, the wealth gap, and still here we are. Still who we are as a Black people, still being excellent, still persisting and doing it excellently and looking amazing at it. And so thank you both. Before we open it up to questions, Ms. Langon, our scholars have been asked to participate in a project during this experience where they are drawing Garrett the giraffe. Why do we name the giraffe Garrett? Named after Garrett Morgan, who is a famous Black inventor. So he invented the yellow light in the street light, which is amazing, the gas mask and a lubricated needle so that when folks were sewing back in the early 19th century, the sewing machine didn't burst in fire and harm the seamstress, and also the building in which they were sewing. And so the giraffe is named after an important Black inventor. But what can you tell us a little bit about art therapy and how that can potentially influence your mood?
So art therapy is exactly what it sounds like. I am trained in therapy, but instead of relying on talking and words, we rely on the creative process and the art making process for change. So I deal with a lot of clients who've been through really traumatic experiences. Sometimes people don't want to re-talk about their trauma. They don't want to tell that story over and over again. And so what happens is we build a relationship around creating art. And the belief with art therapists is that the art making itself is healing. It doesn't matter what you make or how you make it, there is healing in creating. And so that is what I want you to take away from this. It doesn't matter what you drew, what your giraffe looks like. That time you took to activate that part of your brain brings healing to you in ways that you don't recognize. There's also a lot that is brought to me in helping and diagnosing people that comes up in the art that, you know, people don't necessarily recognize. The art making process brings the unconscious to the conscious. So it's a vehicle for change and healing, and you can do it. You can use art as healing on your own. You don't necessarily need to see an art therapist, right? So I encourage you, be creative in whatever ways that is, whether that's art, dancing, poetry, music, do it every day. Do it until you smile, right? Those things are so important. Activating those creative parts of your brain bring about healing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we're so excited for those of you all who did draw the giraffe. If you didn't, we are not going to take any bonus points away from you or kick you out of the program. It's just an opportunity for you to experience an activity that can potentially improve your mood. And with that, I want to open up the floor for questions for our final 13 minutes. So, right? So like if there's a lot of questions, perhaps we could go over a little bit, but are there any scholars right now that have questions for our subject matter experts that joined us today? What are some things that are on your mind? What did you learn? And perhaps how can you tap into their expertise while they're here in this space with us? And if you have that question, go ahead and drop it in the chat box and we will read it to our guest. And while you're typing, I just have a quick question for you, Dr. Williams. You're a psychologist. What is the difference between psychology and therapy?
Perfect question. So really, you have different types of psychologists. Okay, I'm a social psychologist. Okay, and I used to be a mental health therapist years ago, which meant I was a therapist, but I practiced under someone that was licensed. Okay, but right now I'm not a practicing psychologist. I'm not licensed. Okay, years ago we could do it without a licensure. Now you have to be licensed. So either way, so a psychologist, you have clinical psychologists, counseling psychologists, and they have PhDs in clinical psych. They may have a PsyD or counseling psych. So those are your, what we call a practicing psychologist, where they are actually doing therapy. And then you also have social workers who also are licensed, and then they are clinical social workers. My sister's a clinical social worker, and then they also do therapy as well. So therapy is what we do, but then you have several occupations, psychologists who can be a therapist. A social worker can be a therapist.
That's it. No, that's great. That was a perfect breakdown. Thank you for that. We got our first question from Dexter, who said, what are your thoughts on motivational interviewing and therapy?
Oh, of course. Dexter? That's
coming with the fire.
Okay, I might pass that one on. So, okay, let me ask, when he talks about thoughts on therapy, can he expand? What does he mean?
Dexter, give us some more context.
Yeah, Dexter, unmute and ask your question specifically.
All right. Hi first. I mean, my question was mostly just like on how, just ways that, I don't know if you heard of it before, like the term is kind of new to me, and I just kind of got introduced to it myself. So I just wanted to get like more input, but it's kind of just a way to kind of talk to people and like, you can run like interviews without being like, basically letting them lead the way, you know, without being overbearing and like pressing, the issue at hand, but like letting them kind of figure it out themselves.
No, I think that's good. So when we come to the field of therapy, or you have these different paradigms in terms of how people are trained to provide service. So motivational interviewing then is one of them. I can honestly agree, let you know that I'm not the expert. I did therapy years ago, so I was never trained in motivational interviewing, but I do have professors that sit under me that do know and teach about motivational interviewing. But just like you said, that to me sounds like a client-led process, which is very, very powerful. Anytime that you can allow the client to lead the process, then that's very, very powerful in getting them that growth and healing versus it being a process where the therapist is leading. The client is the expert in their lives. So I want to say that motivational interviewing comes from that paradigm in therapy where the client is the expert. So you allow the client to lead and the therapist follows.
Thank you.
Dexter, thank you for that additional context. We appreciate it. And Dexter, what school? In what school are you enrolled?
Texas A&M University.
And what's your classification?
I'm classified as a senior, but I'm third year.
Third year. Okay.
Wow.
Okay. I see you overachieving. We love that. We love that. Okay. Thank you so much, Dexter, for that. And we'll go on to our next question from Wayne Holmes. Wayne, and you're the Bethune-Cookman University, correct? And so your
great Bethune-Cookman University.
The great Bethune-Cookman University. So thank you for that correction. And so you asked the question, how do you know when you meet your true potential and also when you know that you can't be comfortable with your life?
I can start with this one. It's a big question, but I like it. And I think it really actually just goes to what, Dr. Williams was just talking about, you being the driver in your life. I think this question of knowing you've met your true potential is beautiful. I think that's something that you have to know, right? When do you feel like you're in a place that you want to be? But I also think that there is no cap to that potential. Your potential is infinite. Please do not be shooting for a goal that stops. Just continue to strive and climb. Like, it's a good question, but keep going. There's no end, right? This race is not a race that we are finishing, right? You just pass it on to the next person.
Awesome. Your potential is infinite. You over there just dropping gems. And we catching them. We only got 2 hands though, Miss Langa. You gotta keep dropping them. We'll pick them up if we drop them, but that we love it. We love it. Thank you. All right. So thank you. I think we had 2. We have another question. Thank you, Lizzie. I appreciate that. Hello, good afternoon. Lizzie from St. John's University. Thank you, Dr. Williams. Thank you, Miss Ann, for the gems dropped today. It was very insightful. I'm planning on having a podcast to create the space to have likewise discussion about the realities of wellness and coping, especially within the African community. How would you advise going about this, and what essential topics would you recommend?
Okay. Y'all be dropping. I feel like I'm defending my dissertation. Jesus Christ.
It's amazing. We love our scholars.
Oh my goodness. So no, I think like this type of format is what it, so having a format where people will get a chance to, first of all, just talk about how they're feeling. Okay. So that's the one thing. So if you do something like that, if you can have a space where people can just be open and authentic and vulnerable. So you can kind of start with that. And then also just then having your persons that are your experts, your therapist, your psychologist, whatever the case may be, that can then also provide some guides for how do we cope. So what does coping look like, right? And what does healing look like? So I think it's kind of really simple. You don't want to make it too complex. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like, how are we feeling? Let's talk about it. What does healing look like? And then how do we cope? How do we manifest that coping? So, and have someone that can talk and provide some insight on coping skills and things like that in healing.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Williams. Ms. Langa, you want to chime in here?
Yeah, I think the only other thing I would add to that is it's important to cultural competency. I think if you want to focus specifically on the African community, don't bring in an expert who doesn't know about the African community, okay? Make sure that you have cultural competency, because we know that things do not look good the same across the board. How things look for our community looks very different for others. So make sure that you have someone who is versed in the culture.
No, very good. Very good. Thank you, Ms. Langine. And I want to thank both of you all for being here today and for contributing to this safe space for our scholars. We have learned so much from your expertise, and we are so grateful that you spent your most valuable asset, right, which is time with us. And are there any final words that you want to give to our scholars before I hand it over to Dr. Ackerball to close us out?
Sure. Just as we've talked about, what's happening and things like that, and you guys talked about coping and definitely using art. What I would encourage you guys during this time, begin to find out what things personally fulfill you. We are a very external society, so we are very connected to what fulfills me: my job, my education, my boo, my kids. Well, guess what? God said, I'm about to shut all of that down, all of it. Yes. And showing us that the fulfillment has to be more than those external things, because at any point in time, those external things can be taken away, and they have. He has shut it down completely. Like, although some of us are still working, we're working from home. Like I live by my daggone self. I'm 2 seconds from being in Shepherd Pratt, crazy home. But anyway, so what I want to say is this. Find some things that personally fulfill you, that you can do, that brings you joy. It might be art. It might be cooking. It might be reading books. It might be getting more into exercising, going out in nature, taking a walk, connecting to the energy of the earth through water and things like that. Photography. So, learn how to find some personal fulfillment during this time when we cannot connect with friends physically. We can't go out like we used to. We can't go to conferences. So you got to find some things that fulfill you personally. And then also just learn that one thing that I do with myself, I have a date night. So date night with myself is I go get some crabs, y'all. And I get a good movie on Netflix.
Yes, Netflix.
And that's my date night. So, learn how to, personal, find those things that bring you joy, and that you don't need anything or anybody else to be a part of that thing belongs to you. Work on that.
And an ovation. I love it. Okay, Miss Langa, what you got for us? Because y'all about to have me running last.
I agree wholeheartedly. I just say do all that with openness for yourself, okay? Open your heart and take away the judgment. I think there's so much judgment in society. We get judgment from everybody else. Don't judge yourselves. Allow space for whatever it is you want to do, right? If you don't usually do yoga, but you want to do yoga, do yoga. That's what you want to do. Don't judge yourself. Don't talk about it's weird, as for white people, it's this or that. Do what makes you happy, what makes you feel good. Embrace it.
I love it. Thank you so much, Miss Lane.
Can I say one more thing too?
Come on, hop back on in here.
One more thing. Also, this is what I learned from another therapist as well, is that we are not in normal times. So stop trying to be normal. Like, in other words, most of us had, like, when COVID first happened, I kept my schedule, y'all. I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep on exercising. I would get up every morning, get dressed, makeup on, fix breakfast, fix lunch, make sure I exercise. That was after COVID, because I had to keep myself above water. Right now, every day, I don't know. I don't want to wake up. And every day is like, what am I going to do? Do I exercise first? So what I'm saying is this, that what worked before may not work now. What used to bring me joy, which is like being in my house, because I love being in my house. Before COVID, now I'm tired of being in my house. So what I'm saying is give yourself, and Sherelle said this, be compassionate, and don't expect yourself to have this normal, like, standard routine. Allow for some flexibility. Know that there are going to be some days where it's just not going to be so. So be compassionate towards yourself. Give yourself some grace.
Awesome. Okay. Give yourself grace. That was a great last word. Give yourself some grace. And Dr. Ackerball, over to you for our final words.
Yes, this was, finger snaps, hand claps, pass the collection plate. We did it all this evening. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nicole. Thank you, Sherelle. We appreciate you.